60% of female cash savers say that fear of losing money, not knowing where to start, complexity, and wanting easy access, it holds them back from investing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 1 of a Vanguard investing series. Today, I'm very excited to talk about the topic of breaking down barriers. We are joined by 3 Vanguard crew members, colleagues, and friends of mine I'm excited to have here today. Ella, Aggie, and Izzy, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to kick off just with the first question, and Aggie, I'm going to throw it to you. What first sparked your interest in investing?
Great question. And hey, Maddie, thank you for facilitating this for us. It's a super important topic, hey. I will share my thoughts, and Izzy, Ella, would love to know if this resonates with you or not. So honestly, I fell into investing by chance. We weren't taught about investing at school, at university. For me, at least, it certainly wasn't a topic that we talked about around the dinner table at home. And it just so happens that I started working in financial services, and so naturally started hearing and finding out more about the world of investing, and my eyes opened up. I didn't know that we had stocks and shares ISAs, that we could put in £20,000 a year into tax-free, and that money could grow and it could compound over and above what it would in a standard savings account. So by chance for me.
Izzy, what about you?
I mean, that really resonates with me. When I think back to growing up, the conversation around the dinner table was always about working hard, saving, and not getting into debt. There was never a conversation around taking that extra step to invest. For me, it was only when I'd graduated and been working for a couple of years and managed to gain a little bit of traction with my savings that I thought, oh, how do I make my money work a bit harder for me, especially in recent years with the cost of living crisis. You know, high inflation was really top of mind for me in terms of eroding the purchasing power of my hard-earned savings. So that was the moment for me where I thought, okay, saving is not going to be enough to get me to reach my financial goals. And that's when I turned to investing.
Exactly, yeah. Taking that step for investing can get you just a little bit further. And it is for everyone as well. Ella, anything that you would add?
Yeah, no, completely the same, to be honest. It was all about saving, living within your means. It wasn't until I ultimately decided that I would be looking to buy a house at some point down the line, and my money sitting in a standard bank account isn't really going to do much for me. So it was much the same as that. Yeah, that shift, I think.
Exactly. Makes a ton of sense. And I think you were all very fortunate that you found the financial industry and it helped kind of give you that insight and understanding. But many people, they maybe turn to friends and family and just what they can consume otherwise. So with that, sometimes there's myths and misconceptions about investing. Ella, what myths and misconceptions have you come across in investing?
Sure, I think there's probably 2 main misconceptions. So one being that you need to have this big lump sum of money that you can invest in to start with, and you need to have enough that if you were to lose it, it doesn't matter as much. So that is obviously not the case. Like, starting small is equally as good as having that big sum if you are fortunate enough. I think the other thing as well for me is that I thought it would be like too much effort. I spend a lot of time on it. I'd have to constantly fiddle with a portfolio, and it would take a lot of my spare time away from me. And again, that's not the case. You can let it do its thing, leave it alone. So yeah, they're the 2 main things for me, I think.
Does that resonate with you both?
Yeah, no, definitely. In my mind, it was you either needed to be an expert or have a financial advisor. And in my mind, I wasn't an expert and I didn't have enough money to get a financial advisor. So the concept of DIY investing or investing in a managed portfolio, I didn't know existed.
And I just add to that, Izzy touched on the myth around needing to be an expert. And I think naturally there's so much or perceived complexity in the investing world because there's jargon thrown around and acronyms and numbers and seemingly scary things, but it doesn't need to be that way. And actually there are so many options for all of us, depending on where you are in your life and your preferences, to get started with investing.
Yeah, these are real barriers to investing. It can make it hard to take that first step. I think that's something that we see across the industry and affecting women in particular. I want to read you all a stat and would love your take and thoughts on this after I complete it. So the stat is 60% of female cash savers say that fear of losing money, not knowing where to start, complexity, and wanting easy access, it holds them back from investing. And on top of that, 77% of women say they want to spend the least amount of time possible sorting their investments. What do you think about that?
It doesn't surprise me at all. I'm going to say, I'm like, yep, I agree with all of that. Yeah, I think it's also the fear of the unknown, I think prevents a lot of people from starting investing. Linking back to what we were saying, like not being an expert, assuming you have to be. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Ella. It's almost like you don't know what you don't know. And if you've not been made aware of the power of investing and what it can do, then how are you to know to actually get started? And maybe I'll just share a quick story, which I think is relevant to this here. So just bear with me. I remember I was on a trip with some friends. There was four of us ladies. We were in our mid-20s and we were in Seville having a lovely time. I remember it to this day. We were on a rooftop bar overlooking Cathedral, this drinking sangria. It was a great day. And for whatever reason, we decided to bring the tone down and start talking about money.
As you do.
As you do. And we were chatting about where our money is. And, you know, the girls asked me, hey, where's your money? What's it? You know, how's the cash saving on your bank account? And I said, well, actually, my money is in a stocks and shares ISA. And the response was, from all three of them, what's an ISA? And I just thought, geez, I was a little bit taken aback. But then thinking back to me not knowing anything about investing or what an ISA was when I first started work, how were they to know? And we started talking about this a little bit. And they mentioned the myths we just talked about. So the perceived complexity, not having time, not having knowledge. But also they touched on the fact that, oh, it's a guy thing. It's for males. I can't be doing this as a female. So that sticks with me to this day because I think it really touches on the topic here and that challenge that women have around starting to invest.
Yeah, it's a powerful story. It highlights the real barrier. You said you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Investing is for everyone, but sometimes you need to talk to your friends, spread the word about how to do that to make sure everybody knows the great options out there. Izzy, anything that you would add?
I think for me, thinking back, a lot of my peers were investing in individual stocks, for example, and I saw it as very high risk, potentially high reward, and not necessarily being in a position to have a huge amount of money to play with. That was very risky to me. So yeah, I mean, that story resonates so much. I didn't think it was for me. It was only when I really started to think about my own goals and my own future and spending the time to think about my finances more closely that I realized investing actually was for me and not this mysterious concept that you hear a lot about on social media, right? Like there's a lot of information out there, and I think that's half of it, really getting to the crux of what works for you.
And it can feel quite abstract and like far removed, can't it, initially? So
there's a lot of great diversified options that are so different from the kind of single stock picking that was super popular in college. Thank you for sharing kind of a bit of those myths and also your personal experiences behind them. Would love to ask, how did you overcome those barriers? How did you gain more confidence in investing over time?
I think for me, I was fortunate enough to have time on my hands. Like I don't have any children, I live on my own. So it was kind of, I had the time to invest, pardon the pun, into what risk levels I'd be willing to take, maybe what types of platforms I'd want to use, that sort of thing. So I think that for me was the first step in overcoming kind of these myths. And I realized very quickly actually that they don't exist. And the risk that you shouldn't overestimate the risk. You should understand it, but not overthink it, I think was my initial overcoming that barrier.
Yep, I love that. Aggie, anything you would add?
Well, I love what you said. It was like educating yourself, right? It's important. It's important, especially as females. I think a couple of things stuck out for me. So first, the power of planning for the long term and understanding the long-term benefits of investing. And then secondly, consistency. So on the first, if we think about Jack Bogle, who founded Vanguard, over 50 years ago now, his mantra is staying the course. And I always think about that when markets wobble or where things don't feel quite right. But actually, we shouldn't feel pressure to react. We shouldn't feel nervous. We shouldn't feel that fear. But instead, we should be patient and we should be consistent with what we're doing long term. And that's exactly what I try and remember whenever things do feel a little bit wobbly. And just on the consistency piece, just putting a bit of money away every month into investing, no matter how small, can be really, really powerful. And having the discipline to do that is something that I try and hold myself to.
Exactly. I remember starting when I worked at Vanguard 9 years ago, about when I started, and it would be 50 at that time dollars, or say 50 pounds that you can put aside from your paycheck every month, and that adds up a lot over time. So you can start exactly where you are today.
Yeah.
Izzy, anything that you would add from your perspective?
So I'd say two things when it comes to overcoming those initial barriers. One, for me personally, was having that emergency fund. So building up those 3 to 6 months worth of expenses so that if a rainy day comes along, that's there. I'd say that's a great first step. And then when it comes to getting comfortable with investing, a lot of people say, oh, investing's not for me. But what they might not know is that most employed people have what's called a workplace pension. And I think getting comfortable with understanding what your pension's invested in is a great first step. If you think about you're investing for retirement, right, with a pension, it's a very long-term goal, but everyone's appetite to risk varies too. But you can get under the hood and see what's your, employer contribution, for example, is being invested in, look at the options surrounding that. And when you then get really comfortable with your pension and then you've got your emergency fund, if you're in the fortunate position to be able to get some other savings together, that's when you can look to see how you can make that money work for you too. And that's where the confidence, I think, with those baby steps comes in effectively.
I think that's great advice. Starting with that pension, taking a little bit of time to educate yourself and learn about it. And that can be a great first step, sounds like, for all of you into investing. Maybe Ella and Aggie, one more question for you both. What is one simple step women can take today if they want to start investing?
Good one. I think finding out what your goals are and what your risk appetite is, they're the two key things, I'd say. So you should have a reason to invest. That helps you stick with it and that helps you work out why you're doing it. And then I think, as you were saying, starting small. I think.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah, and then I guess with the discipline thing, starting small but doing it over and over and over again. So keep that momentum going because you can't just do it once and never again.
And you probably think that even if it is a small amount, Addie, you touched on it, it's not going to do too much. It's not going to have a big impact, but actually have the discipline, stay the course, keep it in, and the money will work hard for you.
Yeah, I think starting is sometimes the hardest part, but the most important step with whatever you have available, taking that first step is going to actually build that wealth.
Exactly. I wish I'd started sooner.
Right. But
to be honest,
interesting, just to that point, Izzy, you touched on it, the fact that through uni you would see folks investing in the individual holdings, and that can be a little bit overwhelming and a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But there are so many great offers out there now, and you think of managed services, you think about our managed ISA here at Vanguard, where you don't have the time, the expertise, the desire to be investing and picking yourself. You can hand that over to experts to do it for you. And I actually got into investing with a managed ISA, and however many years later, that is still where all of my investments are.
Because it's easy.
Exactly
you
that.
Think about it.
Exactly that.
Also,
do you want to say? Wonderful. It's great.
That's great. I love all of your answers today. I think they were extremely insightful. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you all for watching. We really hope you enjoyed part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. We hope to see you on the YouTube channel.